So we have Dr. Simon Lee with us, and we talked to him in the fall season when we were looking ahead to the forecast for the stratospheric polar vortex. And there was some indication the polar vortex winds were going to weaken a little bit in early December. And what we've seen so far in the month of December is that the lower stratospheric polar vortex winds have weakened quite a bit. When we've seen some ridging develop in the Arctic that has sent cold air into Europe and Asia so far this winter season, but we haven't seen anything yet in North America. So can you give us the latest on what you're seeing with the lower stratospheric polar vortex as well as the upper stratospheric polar vortex and what may be coming down the pike?
Yeah, so if I sort of start from up in the mid-stratosphere, the vortex is slightly weaker than normal for this time of year, and sort of those forecasts that we were thinking about a few weeks or a few months ago have sort of verified we are seeing a weakened vortex in December, but only slightly. Down in the lower stratosphere, things have been quite mixed, and there's been no long-term persistent signal there for either a weak or a strong vortex, which is probably consistent with it being still early in the winter. And usually we'd expect those big anomalies to develop much more into sort of January, February time. But certainly it seems like what we were thinking about last time we spoke, that the vortex would be weakening as we moved into what is climatologically the strongest part of the year, that those forecasts have been verifying.
And now going forward, I noticed that, the forecast model data does indicate there's some weakening of the winds at 10 hectopascals, and the polar vortex could weaken significantly once we get into January, which could induce a cold air outbreak. But I'm also seeing a couple of competing signals. We have a very strong global AAM that's developing, meaning El Nino is going to be full-fledged in full throttle mode too. So, and the MJO moving into phase 7, which favors warm weather in North America. So what's your take on all these different competing signals going forward into the middle part of the winter?
So the interesting thing there is that a lot of those signals can also help promote sudden stratospheric warming events. So the North Pacific trough pattern that we're seeing that's associated with this Pacific jet extension that's expected to bring unusually warm air into North America and wet weather along the West Coast as we move through the next few weeks, that's also associated with a pattern that amplifies one of the stationary wave numbers in the atmosphere, wave number 1, and that can help disrupt the polar vortex and weaken it. And that's probably associated with why the forecasts are now that the forecasts have kind of locked onto this Pacific weather pattern, why the forecasts are pretty confident across multiple different prediction systems for the vortex to weaken through the latter part of December and into early January.
And if you would like to see more of the conversation that Simon and I had regarding the winter outlook going forward and how the polar vortex will affect our weather, just log onto our website and you will see the link embedded in the story that we will also post on Facebook. Chief Meteorologist Chad Merrill reporting for Newswatch.